Hello, everybody. Please take your seats. We're about to get started. All right. So, good afternoon, and welcome to the library at Berkeley. I am Pablo Vargas, Dean of Library and Learning Resources. I'm very happy to have you here for this amazing event. Great to see so many familiar faces from the past, David, and from now. We have the provost here, David Bogan, and Michael Sheen, the executive director of the conservatory, among other friends from Berkeley, the conservatory, friends and family of the Berk. So, in the summer of 1994, my childhood dream became a reality when I moved from Colombia to attend the prestigious Berklee College of Music. As I settled into my new life and school, I began learning not only about secondary dominants and modal tones, but also about the history of this remarkable institution. One of the first things I discovered was the origin of the name Berklee. It was a mind-blowing moment for me to realize that the name of the president of my college, the kind and elegant man that I've seen at various events talking to students, it was the name of the college, the other way around, Lee Berk. So we are here to celebrate the life and legacy of Lee Berk through this book that Mark Small wrote with Susan Berk.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are very sorry that Susan could not be here with us in person, but we have her through this technology. She's listening to this event. And I also want to acknowledge a very important thing, that these Books at Berkeley event will be Judy Pinnolis' last one. She's about to go on a very well-deserved retirement next month. So a round of applause. I also want to acknowledge Jeanette Horst, our Associate Director of Archives and Special Collections, that could not be here today because she's sick at home. But we are in good hands as Ashley Gray, our collection archivist. Where's Ashley? Oh, right here, is going to make the introductions of our two presenters today. I want to, again, give my gratitude to all our team. I'm very proud of the library and the archives at Berkeley. And here with you now is Ashley.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you all for coming. It's so wonderful to see you. I have a few remarks, actually, from those who can't be here, so I'm going to talk at you for a couple minutes. So welcome to Books at Berkeley. This is a homegrown Berkeley Library interview series conducted by Judy, our Associate Director of Instruction and Engagement, with authors about their books or other library resources that they wish to highlight. It began remotely during the COVID-19 lockdown and has grown from conversations with Berkeley faculty authors to authors and scholars adjacent to and beyond Berkeley. All interview recordings are hosted in Remix, which is our online open access institutional repository. So this recording will become available. And we're very delighted to have Mark Small here for Judy's final interview. The interview is going to be about 40-45 minutes. We'll have some time for Q&A afterward, and then you'll be invited to partake in our refreshments. There will be some food, gather, check out our exhibit displays around this space, chat, catch up. Mark will also be signing a few copies of the book. These books were generously provided by Susan, so thank you so much, Susan. I'm going to read some remarks on Susan's behalf that she sent along since she couldn't be here. Hello, everyone from Phoenix, Arizona, everyone gathered here in the library and archives of Berkeley. I bring you greetings. And first, I want to say a heartfelt thanks to Janae Force and Ashley Gray for organizing the launch of the biography, Lee Berk, Leading the Berkeley Way, written by Mark Small. Janae has worked diligently to organize today's gathering, and I am so saddened that she, like me, is unable to be with you today. But you must know that our hearts and spirits are with you all, and we are so interested in watching and hearing what proceeds. I can't do this with one hand. There we go. I want to personally thank Mark Small for writing this book. It's been an extreme pleasure to work with such a gentleman and talent who was a deep friend and highly respected by my late husband, Lee. A little story about this book. Lee was so humble that he would not have wanted a book written about him. When I first received the copy, I cried thinking about Lee and his reaction. At first, he may have been angry, but after reading the book, finding out more about his personal history, his ancestors, and the impact he had on music education throughout the world, and his personal relationships with those he surrounded himself with, I feel he would have given me one of his beautiful smiles and told me after reading it that he loved it and that it was a job well done. I'm grateful to Debbie Cavalier for her support from the very beginning. She introduced me to Jonathan Feist, our editor, and gave us encouragement to go forth with the book with Hal Leonard. I hope you purchase the book, share it with others, and enjoy the read. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Susan. We miss you. All right, finally, let me introduce to you our interview participants, and we'll get the show on the road. So we have with us today Mark Small, who launched his career as a music journalist in 1982 and has contributed hundreds of articles to publications, including Guitar Player, Acoustic Guitar, Soundboard, and Downbeat. He served as managing editor of Berklee Today magazine at Berklee College of Music for 26 years and co-authored the book Masters of Music, Conversations with Berklee Greats. Mark studied jazz guitar and composition and arranging at Berklee. He earned his Bachelor of Music degree from NEC and his master's from California State University Fullerton, both in classical guitar. Judith Pinnolis, Associate Director of Instruction Engagement here at the library, is also currently the chair of the New England Music Library Association and a current guest curator at the Milken Archive of Jewish Music in Los Angeles. As an author, Judy has contributed to numerous anthologies, critical handbooks, encyclopedias, and reference guides on subjects spanning and intersecting Jewish music studies, choral music, women composers, and music library collection development. She has published nearly 70 music and book reviews and 30 books at Berklee interviews. And this will be her final one. So I'll hand it over. Let's get the show started. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, Mark, and welcome to Books at Berklee.
Great to be here. Thank you, Judy.
Well, this book is, I enjoyed it so much. I just wanted to say that at the very beginning. It's a cross between a biography of Lee Berk and the history of Berklee, of a college. It's a biography of also the college. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how the book and its design of intertwining these two things, the biography and the college history, came about. What were the roles that you and Susan took in creating the book?
Well, I did a lot of research, especially here in the archives, and conducted a lot of interviews with people who are here with us today and others to get the institutional side of Berklee. And Susan really glued everything together with the personal side, their history, and then some asides for what was happening in Lee's life when big events were happening here at the college. So I kind of stitched those two things together, alternating according to chronology and what was going on at the time.
Oh, that's great. And I was wondering about your process of writing, and did you conduct a lot of interviews that were outside of the archive?
I did. I had a lot of personal phone calls and with people who had key positions. Primarily, I interviewed the people that were the founding chairs of the majors that I consider, and a lot of people consider, to be groundbreaking at Berklee. And so we had a lot of personal dialogue with people. And after what happened on October 21st, when we lost Lee, it seemed like I felt that I should start out with the person interviews, the ones who were around, because there were so many people that I wanted to speak to and get their personal take on things.
Yeah, we had a lot of you had a lot of good quotes from people in the book, and very interesting, and also some testimonials in the back, and we'll get to that in a little bit. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your coming to the Berklee Archive and going through a process of figuring out of a massive amount of information and finding what you wanted.
Well, luckily there's a staff at the archives, because I wouldn't have done well if it was just a bunch of files that I had to rummage through. I had Ashley and Janae here at the archives. I'd tell them what I was looking for, and I'd schedule an appointment. When I came, there were boxes with that, and these boxes contained many more things that I stumbled across that I hadn't known that I was even looking for.
Oh, that's great. So serendipity.
Yeah, it really was great.
One of the things that I was hoping that we could talk to our audience about is a little bit more about the purposes that you see this book playing going forward?
Well, as Susan said in her remarks that Ashley just read, Lee was not a fan of the idea of having a book written about him. And in fact, the day before he passed away is when I played a concert out there. I think we'll reference that later. But Susan and I walked back to where I was going to drop off my instrument before we all went to dinner. And she said, would you like to help me write a book on Lee? But he doesn't really want to give much input on this. He was a very, not shy, but he just was not tooting his own horn or waving his own flag ever. He was quietly accomplished. And so I signed on for that, saying, sure, I'll help you do that. It was probably just going to be a little thing about 75 pages that would be self-published. And then after the next day when Lee passed, and then the news circulated through the college and the college community weighed in, it seemed like an imperative to do something about Lee's life and also what his role was at the college in developing, helping with all the experts that he had on board or that he hired to develop an amazing curriculum that was course changing for music education.
Yeah, I was hoping that you can talk a little bit about how in the beginning that Lee came to be involved with Berklee. Obviously we know that his father was, but how it came to be that he himself started on this path and followed at the college.
Okay, if I could just preface it a little bit with some history. The Berk family and Alma Berk, Lee's mother, was Alma Schlager. Their families were both immigrant families from Russia, in a place that was not a great place to be if you were of the Jewish heritage. And they came over in the late 19th century. And Lawrence Berk, Lee's father, was born in 1910, and he was the firstborn son of these immigrants. And so I see this as kind of an American dream story. That these people came and did what a lot of people did, is roll up their sleeves. And so Lawrence started the institution, and he had a really good thing going. And then Lee came along as the only son. Of course, we've heard the story from Pablo that I think most people here know, that the name of Berklee is because of Lee, and it had formerly been called the Schillinger House, named for a Russian music theorist and composer, Joseph Schillinger, who trained Lawrence Berk. And when it came time to name the college, it was a dream of Fred Berman that we reversed the names, and Larry liked the idea. And I'm sure he was aware of Berklee, in California, the University of Berkeley, UC Berkeley. And so maybe he, in his marketing, was thinking, yeah, this will have a resonance, but it's far enough away and it's spelled differently that people won't mix them up, but they still do. They still do. And so when Lee came on board, Lee graduated from high school in 1960 in Newton, and then he went to Brown University, where he got a degree in 1964 in political science. But it's literally a one-page autobiography that Lee wrote that Susan passed along to me that I was lucky enough to have. He revealed that he was not happy with the course of study he was having at Brown. And he had always wanted to be a writer himself, but Larry Berk, his father, and one of the deans at Brown said, stay the course here, don't transfer to Stanford School of Journalism, which he did, which he did not transfer. He stayed at Brown. And after he graduated with that degree, he went right into BU Law School and earned his Juris Doctorate in 1966. And from there, he came into the family business. He was functioning as bursar and doing a bunch of different things. He also, I think it was part of his final project for his doctorate, he wrote a book about legal protection for creative musicians. And he started teaching courses. A lot of people don't know that Lee was actually a faculty member in the early days. He taught, and this was a pioneering book that he wrote. There hadn't been much out there in the marketplace for that. And it won a publisher, the ASCAP Award, Deems Taylor Award. And so Lee came in, and then he became vice president in about 74. And then later, when Lawrence Berk announced his retirement, I guess it was probably the late fall of 78, Lee went through the interview process. It wasn't just the scepter was passed to Lee. He went through an interview process and was to be the next president. And he took over June 1st in got my thing here. I don't want to misstate it. It's 1979, right? 1979, Lee became the president. And that's when all the action started happening with all the new majors. Gary Burton had said something here that he said Lawrence Berk was a visionary and somebody who had great ideas. And he, as Gary put it, Gary Burton, who most people know as the multi-Grammy Award-winning jazz vibraphonist, but he was integral at for Berklee's development. He said that Lawrence Berk had kind of a fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants way of doing things. It had started from a one-room music teaching studio, went to 284 Newbury Street as the first building in the Schillinger House, and later spread to Boylston Street and then into this building that we're in and further and beyond. So Lee's job when he came was to kind of organize it. He wanted to, it had the name college by then, Berklee College of Music, but he wanted to organize it along the guidelines of the universities he'd been part of. And he wanted to do that, and he said about that. And he also carried his father's mandate of, it was Lawrence Berk's dream to offer the first degrees in American music, which he did. And jazz was the curriculum and the musical genre that was primarily studied here when it was not welcome in other music institutions around the country and the world. And Lawrence took this curriculum and this school from outlier to bellwether for leading the way in contemporary music education. And Lee brought on board a bunch of people here that helped. I'll just name some things. Some of them are here with us. In 1979, film scoring with Chair Don Wilkins. And then 1983, music production and engineering with Don Palouse. And 1986, music synthesis, chaired by David Mash. Songwriting with Jack Perricone as the chair in 1986. 1991, music business and management with Don Gorder as the chair. And in 1996, music therapy with Suzanne Hanser as the chair. And so those were some of them were firsts in the nation, first anywhere. Music therapy had been established, but as Suzanne explained in the book, that the music that they used for music therapy in most programs was classical music. And so they set about to do something with popular and jazz, which was a groundbreaking policy. So that was Lee's, in a nutshell, a very verbose nutshell, what his contributions were over the period he was here.
Well, that's a tremendous amount of growth. In so many ways, Berklee grew so rapidly based on this response to a need, based on response to needs and trends in music and music education. And the school was designed, as you've pointed out, to meet those needs that were not met elsewhere. This was not only a good business plan, but it was also a great plan, it turns out, led the way in higher education and music in so many ways in the country. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit more in depth about Lee's role and his particular way of responding to these growing demands that are happening very, very quickly in the space of a very short, really, looking back, it's really a very short period of time in music education. And what were, you mentioned some of these main departments and the curriculum that came in, and what was the kind of role that he played?
Well, Lee was a very good listener and a very good judge of character, and surrounded himself with experts. And even when some of them didn't feel that they were perhaps the perfect choice for the position he wanted them in, I happen to be in that category. But I'm in good company because Gary Burton was too. He asked Gary, he told Gary to apply and considered his becoming the dean of curriculum. And Gary says, I'm a musician. He had come to college for 2 years here at Berklee, and I don't think it wasn't even a college then. So he felt like he wasn't primed to do that. And Lee kept coming back to him saying, you're really the best one for this. You know what the curriculum should be here. And Gary's quote in the book is that, well, he kind of wore me down, and eventually I said, I'll do this thing, and probably in a year or so they'll find somebody who's really qualified for this. But of course, Gary was the ultimate qualified dean of curriculum. And so that's just one example of Lee surrounding himself with expert people. And he always listened. David Mash came to him with ideas about music synthesis, and that spread to technology across the campus. There had been the students, Lee listened to the students, and they were clamoring for things in film scoring, and there had been a nascent recording. There were a couple of recording courses here before the major was formed, but the kids really wanted to learn about music recording and production. And they were very lucky to have Wayne Wadhams on staff here, or helping them with this. He wasn't on staff until later, but he knew Don Palouse, who was a very highly decorated and accomplished engineer for CBS. And he was lured up here to a career in education from a very prestigious position that he had. But what I loved about what Don said, he said he walked into the building and he could feel the energy. And I think that is infectious for anybody who came from outside and ended up here. They felt that. And the students feel that when they walk in the door.
Oh, I can attest to that myself.
Yeah.
It's definitely the vibe. I was so impressed, and all of the things that he had done here at Berklee. And then I said, whoa, one school is not enough. So one of the things I learned in this book was the role of Lee helping in the founding of the Boston Arts Academy, and that is a high school. And if you could tell us a little bit about this kind of area where Lee gives back to the community and the people of Boston and the music community in general.
Okay, well, when Berklee became a nonprofit institution in 1967, the state government has a program called Pilot, Payment in Lieu of Taxes. So they won't be paying taxes, but they ask that you give back to the community because the police are still responding if needed, medical emergencies, whatever. They plow the snow off the sidewalks so you can do business. And so it was fair. And Lee, they were making certain payments in lieu of taxes in certain ways, but Lee also wanted to give back to the community because that was part of the pilot program. And so he was a prime mover behind this idea of community outreach to people of the Boston neighborhoods, and in particular, some disadvantaged youth who may not have had the opportunity to come to college, and he wanted to extend that to them. And he started an outreach with Curtis Warner, who came here, and they went around and visited high schools, and they talked, and then eventually ended up by being a wonderful outreach that brought kids here for mentoring on Saturdays on their lessons to prepare them so that they would be able to attend Berklee if they wanted to after high school. And then started a big fundraising effort with the Berklee Gala, which started in 1995 and has raised millions of dollars in scholarships for local urban youth.
That's great. I was going to ask you a little bit about your own relationship with Lee and Susan, and how did that come about? How did you meet them?
Well, I first met Alma Berk, Lee's mother. Well, let me start earlier. I came here in the 70s as a guitar student, as was mentioned in my bio. And I loved the culture, and I loved the institution. I loved the curriculum. It was everything I wanted, and I was like many, many people who came and found I'm really at the place where I need to learn what I'm going to have. So I didn't know Lee at that point when I was a student, but I went off and did other things, and I lived in California for a time and was writing for magazines. And when I was the LA correspondent for Guitar Player magazine, and when I moved back to Boston, I said, well, I know that's over now because I'm not in LA. But they asked me to do an interview with Bill Levitt, who was the chair of the guitar department, to do a story on the guitar department here. And Alma Berk had a policy that if journalists came on campus, she would like to meet with them first and see that their needs were met. And so she asked me, she happened to be looking for writers in her publicity department. She ran Berklee's public affairs operations. And I was in the right place at the right time, that I was looking for work, having just relocated here. I had hoped on becoming a faculty member, but Alma Berk said, well, you've got a family. You've been talking about a family. You know, if you start in faculty, you'll probably be part-time for a long time. So if you start with me, I can give you benefits, and you'll have a full-time job. That was music to my ears at that point in time. And that's when things started. So I started about January 3rd in 1989. And continuing on, I worked under Lee. He picked me to be the editor of Berklee Today, as I mentioned, at a time when I didn't know anything about desktop publishing. And actually, when he told me I was the final candidate, I did a Gary Burton and said, Lee, you know, I don't know anything about desktop publishing, and I saw some of the resumes you had. I think you'd be better off with those. And Lee, in his very thorough way, said, well, you're a Berklee alum, you know the culture. You've got degrees in music, you know music, and you can write. We'll send you to software training. Discussion over. I said, okay, you've got a good point. I'll take the job. And then we continued through years until Lee retired in 2004. And we stayed in touch periodically. He would come back for things with Susan. They'd come back to campus events, and we always chatted. And then do you want to get to this point now when I go to 2023?
Oh, sure.
Is that out of chronology for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I had gotten a request from Lucy Berk, the younger Berk daughter, if I would do a little tiny video that she was going to stitch together for Lee's 80th birthday in 2002. And so I did that, and Lee and I stayed in contact after that. He liked that I had taken the time to do that. And he invited me out to play a concert in his concert series that he was starting. Some of the things we were going to talk about, I think you mentioned, were what he did in the West after he left Berklee. But we'll jump ahead for this. He invited me out to play in the concert series that he and Susan and Martin O'Sullivan were producing in Phoenix. And I came out. I just happened to pick the date out of the sky. He offered October 20th, so I came out there. And little did I know that was Lee's last full day upon the earth. Nobody knew that a year in advance. And I played the concert, and we had a very warm moment in the car as I was going back to, I expressed to them how much their friendship had meant and what a opportunity Lee had given me in giving me the job that I had here. So that's kind of how we reconnected, and after all the years of in and out of phase with different parts of our lives in different parts of the country.
Yeah, it was a beautiful moment in the book, I have to say. It was very touching. There's so many stories in this book that are packed into a very small book. Could you talk about maybe one of your favorites?
One favorite I have, there's so many great interviews I got from various people, and one person who's here, and I don't want to overlook him, but when you were talking about the build-up to the school, if I can digress for a minute, David Hornfisher came on and really organized this college according to the dream that Lee had, to organize it as a college. He, as the Dean of Administration, he organized so many things, wrote the first budgets and personnel manuals, organized the physical plant, so many things. So we owe a lot to Dave Hornfisher for helping Lee to get to his dream. But for another person that was important was Rob Rose, who wore many hats through the almost 50 years that he had as an association, starting as a student until later on. I think this story that I will read here from the book is something that Rob Rose related to me. Of course, on the commencement, after 1980, well, starting in 1983, the commencements were having a concert for the honoree to celebrate that person's musical legacy. And the year that I'm going to refer to is 1989, when George Martin, the Beatles record producer, and Dizzy Gillespie were the honorees. So it was a great thing, and Rob Rose had organized the concert. The students played, and faculty and other people that were involved produced this concert. And Lee, in his quiet way, had noted that it was Rob Rose's 40th birthday that very day. And so he arranged to have a cake brought to the green room after the concert, and he also put his arm around George Martin. So, "Would you come in and meet Rob Rose?" So they came in there, and so as Rob's blowing out the candles, George Martin is among the voices singing "Happy Birthday" to Rob Rose. And Rob said that Lee was very relaxed around these celebrities. He'd met with David Bowie and Sting and James Taylor and Bonnie Raitt, so many people, Natalie Cole. And Rob Rose said, I think the honorees liked Lee because he wasn't carried away with their stardom. When some people get a chance to be around stars, they want to try to become their best friends, not Lee. He had a great respect for what these people had done, but just saw them as people coming into a college that was teaching their music. Lee made them feel comfortable by treating them like all the other musicians he knew, regular people. And I think that says a lot about Lee.
Yeah. Oh, it's a wonderful passage. I wanted to mention something, and I guess I can't help myself because I'm a librarian. You have an index in the back of this book. I really appreciated that because finding so many names and so many people involved and departments, and so it was really terrific index. And but there's also an epilogue, a list of alumni Grammy winners, and a section of testimonials where you have some nice quotes by people. And one thing you wrote, which I found very insightful, was this passage, if I could just do this quote.
Sure.
A biography may be compared to line art, a sketch of a person. It's impossible to capture with words someone's every emotion, idea, or action occurring throughout a lifetime, but words do portray the essential human attributes. And I'm wondering if you would be willing to sum up to our audience here some words that describe Lee for you, and what would those be?
Well, the testimonials in the back of the book give a lot of detail that will flesh out these things that I would say. But a few things I wrote down that I found Lee to be thoughtful and warm and highly intelligent, a good judge of character, which we've talked about in his hiring practices and knowing people, and very detail-oriented. Those are the things that come to mind. But I think his warm and quiet nature is something that only people that really got to interact with him could really see, because he, as I said before, he wasn't a flag waver and trying to be prominent. He just did his work and did it well.
Well, if I could add, one impression I got from the book is that he was a mensch.
He was.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to comment on or
Well,
talk about?
your reference of that comes from something that Susan will get a kick out of. There was this woman who met Lee at a concert when he was single. He went to a concert at MIT, which had a lot of wonderful concerts there, and he just happened to sit next to this lady, Judy Lapin, and they got talking before the concert, and she said, so you're single, are you looking to meet a girl? And I am, always am. And Judy said in her interview with me, I got to interview Judy, which was a great privilege, because she was much older than Lee and Susan. And she said that Lee impressed me as a mensch, just a true, reliable man.
Yeah.
It was something from the Jewish culture that she was also Jewish, and she wanted to introduce him to another wonderful Jewish person. And and she claims now to have been the matchmaker, because she did bring Lee and Susan together. That's one of her great claims to fame.
Good job.
Okay.
So thank you so much. At this point, I would like to take if there are any questions from our audience.
Mark, one thing about, there's one section in the book, and Dave probably is the one to respond, but it talked about the financing of the college. It went from practically nothing. I mean, this little, room above the bar, basically, apartment above the bar, to this fantastic organization. You talked about bonds, but can you expand on that a little bit?
That's a little bit out of my field of expertise, but I know that the bonds to buy this particular building were financed, and Lee had researched it, and other people who were financial experts who were on the board of trustees found that there were federal grants and ways that you could have the financing charges of these bonds paid by the U.S. government. So they expended a lot of money to get this building, this building that was from 134 to 150, or I guess it's even further down, 154 Mass Ave, this whole block. that they could get that and get a very low interest rate. And Lee was very proud. I talked to him the day before his passing. He talked about saying that, you know, we paid that bond off, and he really was very happy the day that they retired that bond. The other thing about financing that we didn't get to talk about was, in one of the other groundbreaking things, was the startup of Berklee Online with Debbie Cavalier and David Cusack. And that's another thing with financing. And there was a grant that came from the returns on the investments of the endowment. And they wrote about this. It took about $8 million to start that venture up with Berklee Online, but it is returned. It returns at least that much every year now. So that was another groundbreaking thing that Gary Burton was very behind, and Lee was very thrilled with the way things went and was happy that they retired that debt sooner than they would have thought, because the online school became a big concern around the world. Hope I answered your question, Don. Okay.
In reading this book, one of the things that really hit me was that this really is it's really a love story. It's a love story of family with Lee and Susan, and Lee and his parents, and then his absolute love of music, and then his love of the college. And it just really just hit me right between the eyes after I read it and thought about that, and having experienced a lot of it with him.
Yes, well, it was a family concern, and in the Berklee family, everybody who seems to come here as a student or as a staff member or however they come here, they feel that family link. And no matter where they go, if you find another person that had a Berklee experience, a lot of times they want to know what your experience was. Mm-hmm. And so the family aspect was really important. And I wanted to bring up Don Paluski. I wanted to introduce Don Palus was the one, if he's not on camera, that asked that question about financing, and David Hornfisher, who was Dean of Administration and Executive Vice President at the end of his career here, asked the one about family. And the aspect about family is so important that the very beginning, when Lawrence and Alma Berk decided to start this venture, they actually had to sell some of their personal effects for the down payment of the Newbury Street building. And that shows their level of family commitment to this business. But also they carried this family vibe in, and I believe it was you, David Hornfisher, that told me that most businesses that are family founded don't survive passing the torch to the next generation. But Lee was really wanting to fulfill his father's dream of building this college, and he took the torch. And as I mentioned earlier, he would have preferred to have been a writer for his career. In fact, in his high school yearbook, he mentioned that he'd hoped to get a Nobel Prize in writing, but that wasn't to be. So he'll have to settle for establishing a world-class college instead of that. But so this family tradition continued through, and Lee and Susan were always here for the student concerts throughout Lee's tenure as president. They came for a few concerts a week, because that was how Lee could relate to the students and to know what was going on with them, what their music interests were, and other aspects. So that is a very good point about the family aspect of Berklee.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks for the work on this book. It's an amazing achievement. I'm really curious about another sort of set of developments that took place under Lee's leadership, which was the work outside of the institution proper to develop city music and to develop the Berklee International Network, which for those of us who enjoy what that's become, just seems like a series of acts of organizational genius. And I wonder about where that came from in Lee's own thinking, and also, part of what I understand about that history is his ability to recruit other people who can also do that kind of work. But if you could just comment on that piece of the sort of expanding role of Berklee music education beyond Boston.
Okay, that was a question from David Bogan, provost at Berklee. The story with international relations starts with Lawrence and Alma in the early days, and Toshiko Akiyoshi coming over here in the 50s as a Japanese woman and jazz pianist. And he arranged for her to come and give her a scholarship so that she could come and be here. And he started noticing that with the power of Voice of America playing American jazz in Europe and all parts of the world, that there was a great interest in jazz, and Berklee was teaching it here. And so there was a great interest in people coming here, and Lawrence facilitated scholarships for some of these people to come. And of course, some of the bigger names among them is Arif Mardin, who is a very famous producer for Atlantic Records and part of some of the biggest records in pop history, came here as a student, and he had applied from his native Turkey to come over here. So Lawrence Berk was already cultivating foreign students coming here, and Lee decided that it would be a good thing to do. This was kind of Lee's initiative in the early 90s. I think it's 91, but since I'm on video, I'm going to be careful about this. Yeah, it was 1993 when the Berklee International Network, which is now Berklee Global Partners, was started with a few schools, 3 schools, one in Israel, one in Spain, and where was the other one? Somebody will know.
Greece.
Where?
Greece.
Greece, yes. And Lee wanted to make a way so that these people who were alumni generally, the school in Spain wasn't founded by alumni, but alumni were involved there, they would have coursework that Berklee would accept as credits, so that their students could be in their own country to offset the cost of studying for 4 years, living in Boston and paying Berklee tuition. They could study for 2 years in their own school and then transfer for the last 2 years and get a Berklee degree and have a Berklee experience. And so that was Lee's plan in doing that. And the number of alumni who started schools and took the knowledge they gained here and wanted to bring it to their home country was huge. There might be more now, but last count when I was writing the book, there were 23 international partners. So it was a very successful program.
Can you share more about City Music?
City Music, yes. Well, I shared a little bit about that it was part of the pilot program and the outreach with Curtis Warner and Lee going to high schools. And one of the charming things about that is that they brought the vocal group from 3 Berklee students, Heart and Soul, I guess was the name of the group, and they were an a cappella R&B group. They are there in the back there. Great to see you, Abria and Nichelle. Great to see you. They were a big hit wherever they went and sang at the high school. They were great advocates for what was going on at Berklee. And they came as students here, and they related to me very generously in the book here that when they came as people who were recipients of scholarships through the City Music program and other things, that they were both, the 3 of them were they were mothers, and single mothers at the time, and faced real adversity to get through. And it was a big media event. The Boston Globe picked up on it when the 3 of them graduated. And there were other things. One of them had a child that had some medical concerns, and a mother at the same time that was having health issues. And they triumphed to get a Berklee degree, and that captured the interest of media across the country for the year of their graduation. But they were a product of the scholarship programs that came.
Hi, Mark. Thanks so much for everything that you did on this book. It's wonderful. You told the story of the beginning of the music business management department so well. But there's one matter that I wanted to add that you didn't talk about, probably just because there was only so much you could talk about. But way back at the beginning, when I was first putting the program together, I got invited to a party at Lee's house, and the theme of the party was the announcement of the endowed lecture series for music business management that Lee had arranged with the Board of Trustees to put a fund together to to support this, an annual lecture. And they named it for the outgoing Board of Trustees president, or chairman, I should say, James G. Zaffris. That became the James G. Zaffris Distinguished Lecture for Music Business Management, which is still going on. It's now the longest running endowed event at Berklee. It's the flagship event of the music business department. They've kept it going. And what keyed my memory was, you mentioned Arif Mardin. He was the speaker in 2004, which was Lee's last year. Lee never missed one of these events. He was there every year. I sat next to him in the front row, and so but that all goes back to Lee instigating this way back then, and it's something that has become very important to the department, and it's still going on.
Right. Well, Don Gorder is the one who asked that question, and it's a great thing. Lee was very interested in music business and was always in touch with Don Gorder afterwards to see what some of our graduates were doing. We now have Panos Panay, who's the president of the Grammy organization, who was one of the members of the first class that graduated. Is that correct? Yes. And so this distinguished lecture series brought a great number of people here to the college who, the students and the faculty, everybody wanted to hear from these people who came. They were record company presidents and producers and artists and a bunch of different things. So that was another part of making something at Berklee that was in line with what other established college practices was to have a distinguished lecture series. So that fits in line with the growth of Berklee in stature as an educational institution. And I wanted to add too, you brought up investments. When Suzanne Hanser helped to develop the Berklee's music therapy, she's the founding chair of Berklee's music therapy major, is related in the book. I'll capsulize it. It's told better in there than I'll do it now. But wondering, Lee, so where will we build the clinic for this? And Lee said, we're not going to build a clinic. We have such a limited footprint in the city. We won't be building a clinic. And between the two of them, they figured out that they would begin relationships with other hospitals and medical institutions. And Lee and Susan provided some philanthropic basis for starting that. And what the plan was to, before our students were even going to be coming out looking for jobs, to have music therapy established in places like Children's Hospital and Mass General. And through that seed money that they gave and through Suzanne's networking, they started a place that our students could go and have their clinical experience in there. So that was another brilliant organizational move.
I do have some words from Ted Pease, who couldn't be here today. But yeah, he asked if I could read this out loud. To Mark Small and Susan Berk, I regret that I cannot attend the interview and reception on June 11th, but the continuing success of Berklee College of Music and of Berklee students around the world will be Lee's lasting legacy. Mark Small and Susan Berk have ensured that Lee's story will be told in both its professional and personal aspects. I am proud to have played a part in the success story that is Berklee. There were so many people along the way who facilitated that success, and my success in particular. Lee was certainly one of those people. The songwriting major story detailed in Mark's book is a good example of how Lee facilitated and helped coalesce the ideas of a diverse group of faculty into a creative team that has built that major essentially from scratch into one of the most in-demand majors at the college. I'm also enjoying reading about the Berk family history. It is truly an amazing American success story. Susan's contributions are informative, insightful, and often poignant. So that's from Ted Pease.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan.
We
And
do
thank
have a
you,
couple
Mark.
more minutes if anyone else would like to
Oh,
share.
okay. Sorry.
If nobody has, if people have something, definitely raise your hand. But we have Neil Leonard here today who helped to put together one of the chapters about Berklee's strike, the faculty strike, which was kind of a gloomy period, but it turned out everything came up roses, wouldn't you say, Neil?
Yes, I would say.
I'm gonna give you a mic.
Sorry. It was a rough road that Berklee went through in terms of labor relations, and it wouldn't have been as smoothly paved, I would say, if anyone other than Lee was president at the time. It could have gone very, very into a dark kind of a zone, but because, again, as Mark so accurately says, he was a listener, and he understood the power of the faculty in relation to not only their numbers, but also their expertise, and was willing to invest
in them. And as a result, we've never had to strike again, and we hopefully never will. But it was necessary at that point to push the institution from basically a trade school, as the faculty were looking at it, into a college of a mature institution of higher learning, really. So I thank Lee for that, and I thank Mark for including it, and Susan for including that chapter in the book as well.
Right. That was another point where the faculty needed more compensation and better planning for retirement and all that, and they had to kind of muscle that out. Of course, money is always an issue in any institution, but it was insightful on Lee's part to say if we concede to some of these things and have more full-time faculty members, they will be loyal to us, and then we can insist that they not teach at other places part-time. And so we would have a loyal faculty so that we wouldn't have another strike because there was too much to lose. I mean, so Lee was good at seeing even through the shadows to see where the shafts of sunlight were pointing.
Can we get another round of applause for our interviewers?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. There are refreshments in the corner, exhibit displays around the space. Feel free to hang until 3. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank you.
for
Thank
coming
you,
to Books
Judy.
at Berklee. Thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you.